Welcome to All the Ability with Nikki.
Hey!
The show that informs, uplifts, and celebrates people of all abilities.
Because everyone deserves a story, y'all.
The show that asks the question, what does Long Island have to offer people with special needs and disabilities?
That part.
And here's your host, Nikki Johnson.
Girl! Today on All the Ability, we're spilling the tea with someone who's seen it all from inside the school walls. Sybil Cheresme is a licensed school counselor and mental health counselor with over 30 years of experience in the mental health field. She's earned her master's degree from New York University in 1995 and was among the first professionals to receive a licensure as a mental health counselor from New York State in 2006. Prior to her work as a school counselor, Mrs. Cheresme served as a physical therapist within the foster care system's therapeutic department, providing services to some of the most traumatized children. She also worked as a counselor with teen parents striving to earn their GEDs while developing job skills for long-term employment. Let's hear it for Sybil. Hi, Sybil.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me here this morning. I'm very excited.
I'm excited. I want to know what is going on in these schools right now from your point of view.
Well, what is going on? Well, not to belabor, but we all know COVID definitely did a number on our kids. And we're starting to see that. So let me preface by saying I am in a school that is 7th through 12th grade.
Right.
So I can speak from that lens, not so much from the elementary school lens.
Right.
And what we are seeing is heightened anxiety. We're seeing gaps in skills that not only academic skills, but just socialization skills. Right? Being able to navigate friendships has always been a challenge in the middle school years going into high school, but it's further heightened because during such critical moments of their life when they were going to be practicing those socialization skills, school as we know it came to an abrupt halt for about a year and a half, and for some 2.5 years if they stayed home that additional year. So it became very challenging, and we're seeing that now.
Wow. So let's go back first. What got you into this field to work with children?
So if you want to be honest,
Yes.
I'm going to be honest, Nikki, because we've known each other a long time. So you might remember when I wanted to be a lawyer, right? That's so forever ago. And then I realized I really didn't want to do that. I decided to get my degree in psychology, go into counseling. And ironically, they asked me if I wanted to be a school counselor. And I was just like, absolutely not. So I did what is now known as the mental health track. But, for those of you who are spiritual or religious, God is good. And I got one of my first professional positions in a school setting.
Oh, okay.
And I absolutely loved it. And one of the administrators who took a liking to me really encouraged me to pursue my certification as a school counselor, which I did. And again, fortuitous, right? I applied for one position, and I was fortunate enough to get it. And I'm now completing my 25th year as a school counselor.
That's amazing. Now, you were talking about some of the challenges that the students have in the schools now, specifically the COVID situation. But what's some of the biggest social challenges you're seeing with students, especially with children with disabilities? What are they facing?
I always like to say to people, even when you're thinking of yourself as a child, if you were a typical person growing up, right? These years were already challenging. So now you have this potentially additional layer or layers that make those challenges that much more magnified. So if you take a child who's on the spectrum, they have to navigate social cues, and depending on the resources or the services they received, that continues to be a challenge. Where a typical student also has that challenge, that student's challenge is going to be further magnified.
Right.
If you think about a child who maybe has some physical impairments, right? I like to remind people, when I get up in the morning, I don't have to think about whether my feet are going to hold me up. I just get up, get out of bed, and get my day started. Right. Whereas another child who does not have that same measure of ability, right? There is a distinct difference in how they have to navigate a school building, how they have to navigate getting into their classroom, in and out of their desk. So the differing abilities just magnifies what already is a difficult time in life for children.
Wow. I mean, and I see that some of the experiences I've seen, because that is the issue. They're trying to fit in, and it's just not working. Do students ever come to you worried about fitting in? Like, how do you help them navigate that?
Yeah. And again, I'm going to preface it in the sense developmentally completely appropriate, right? We want to fit in, even as adults.
Yeah.
You know, how many of us are faking it, right? And when we show up in spaces because we want to be accepted, we want to fit in. So one of the things I do in my office is I have all kinds of verbiage and posters about the gifts of ADHD, the creativeness of the neurodiverse mind. I really want to emphasize with individuals that just because they are different doesn't equate less than. Right? Mm-hmm. And being who you are is your gift. That is your superpower, right?
Yes.
And then when you show up as yourself in your authentic skin, you eventually do fit in, right? Because that is what it's about. And I think sometimes, again, developmentally, we're trying to gauge who we want to be versus who we are versus who the world might expect us to be. And I work a lot with them on just being who they are as a gift in and of itself.
Well, that's beautiful, because that's something that you forget, especially as, a young student trying to make it. Now, let's go into what parents should know about services that they can receive in the school if their child does have some sort of disability issue, special need.
I think the first thing, and I'm not sure if you're going to get to this, but I think the first thing is removing the barrier of shame and guilt. I think a lot of times parents feel like if I ask for help, I'm somehow admitting that I am not a good parent, or I did something wrong, or, there's something wrong with my child. So I think the first honest thing is for parents to kind of remember that they are their child's first advocate. Mm-hmm. Right? They know their child better than anybody else. And when you are advocating for your child, to remember that within the context of your child. I'm a big Googler. I Google everything. Schools can be a great resource if you know how to use it and if you know how to navigate it. And if you don't know, that's okay, because in the Google, there are a lot of resources, and some of them are free.
Right.
That will allow you the ability to gain language, right? The appropriate language to request support.
Right.
Right. And how to navigate, sometimes with the assistance of others. And again, that can be free. There are a lot of free advocation services available to help you with your journey.
Okay. Now, in your position, what role do you play in supporting the students with the different needs and the special needs?
So we definitely advocate, and when I see a student who is struggling, I work with my children's support team at school, and we will review, right? These are the things I've been doing. I don't think it's working. Asking for collaborative intervention. What do you think I can do in addition? Maybe I missed something. Mm-hmm. If I did miss something, I'll go back and we'll try that thing. If everybody is in agreement, then the position is that we go further in seeking academic or social supports for that student to help make sure that they are having an appropriate experience in the educational system.
Okay. Now, what's the hardest part of advocating for a child within the system?
As a school counselor?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. The hardest part, Nikki, I'm going to be very honest with you. The hardest part is navigating my heart and what I want to do for my students, and remembering that I'm still an employee of a school district.
I can see that happening.
And I really try to show up in a space from, is what I'm doing good enough for my own? As a parent who have children who receive accommodations through 504 accommodations or specialized education through an IEP, I stand very firmly and checking myself when it comes to, am I doing what I would want done for mine? And sometimes the challenge is also navigating the expectations of my role within a school setting. So that is hands down the hardest part of my job.
Okay. So what are some of these services that are available to parents? You said advocating. Is there anything else like they could get?
So
or-
advocating might look, sometimes advocating might be very simply letting a teacher know, hey, this is what's going on with my child. I just wanted to give you a heads up, right? Advocating might be your child coming home and saying they had an experience. And I don't know about anybody else, but I know back in the day, don't let the school call my mama, okay? Because the teacher's always right and the
Right.
kid is always wrong.
Right.
And I think we need to move from that. So sometimes advocating just means listening.
Right.
Right. And even if your child might be in the wrong, right, educating them as to maybe what they could have done differently in that situation. So advocating can be something as simple as that.
Right.
The other side can be acknowledging that my child is still struggling with reading and they're in 7th grade.
Right. Right.
Right. And asking the school counselor or the clinician, depending on the school district, what can we do with my child to help my child? They're still struggling. If you're in the elementary school systems, what I will I will definitely encourage you is whatever supports they are providing for your child at the elementary school system, please get them formalized. School districts are notorious for providing informal support. And I'm sure as many people know, if it is not written down, it did not happen.
So what should they be documenting? Like,
If your child is getting pull-out services for reading, but it's not through a formalized process like a 504 accommodations plan or an IEP under the Committee of Special Education, get that in writing,
okay.
right? If they get extended time. If, maybe little Johnny's a bit of a handful and he gets a one-on-one to get him from one place to the next, right? Just be mindful that as your child is going through the academic industry, if you will, because it is an industry, right?
Right.
As they're going through their journey, anything that is being provided to your child that is above and beyond what the typical student might get. And even if you only have one child, I always say you were a child at one point. So you are, to some degree, you are familiar with what is typical and what is not.
Right.
Right? So if you know your child is getting something that is above and beyond what the typical child is getting, that probably is a cue to making sure something is documented.
Okay. And why is that so important though?
Because as they get older, the barometer that is used to determine if a student is going to get services kind of shifts a little bit.
Okay.
Right? I am old-fashioned. I believe in giving everything to everybody early on, and as they start to experience success, you take away.
Okay. Right. Okay.
That is not a viewpoint that is shared by many with me. Some people believe, and the law actually says, what is it? A least restrictive environment, right? LRE. But some of the challenges with that, and again, this is where it comes to advocating for your baby, right, is they wait till the child experiences failure to give them more.
Right.
And because I have that mental health piece, I have such a hard time with that.
Right.
I'd rather have a child feel success as we take things away because they no longer need it.
I agree with you. I think I like it that way.
Yeah.
Much better. If a parent feels their child is struggling, what is the first step that they should be doing? What's the first thing?
Ask the teachers what are they seeing in the classroom and describe what your concern is. So, for example, homework. A lot of times teachers give homework. Homework should not take your child hours on end, especially in the elementary school. Absolutely not. If the child is getting an assignment and they're up 2-3 hours, something is not okay. Whether it's they didn't understand the material, whether they're having difficulty with reading and comprehending or doing the calculations, whatever the situation might be, talk to the classroom teacher. Because oftentimes what the teacher will tell you is like, oh, it should not take them that long.
Right.
And also allow your child to make mistakes so that the teacher can assess the child is not understanding. How many of us remember sitting with little Johnny at the table and making sure they got it all right, and then they take a test
And they don't know it.
and they don't know it, right? So I think it's important also from that end. So having a conversation with the classroom teacher from the very beginning, and if it's something to not worry about, the teacher might tell you, don't worry, many of the students are in that same boat right now. Or the teacher might say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize. Or the teacher might say, that explains the disconnect between what's I seeing in the classroom and what's coming in when they come in with perfect homework.
Right.
So definitely, first step is classroom teacher, because other than you, they spend the most time with your child.
Now, let's go socially to a student who does have some struggles. What do you see them dealing with that doesn't show up in like the IEP?
Sorry, I apologize. It can vary. So let's take our garden variety ADHD kid, right? Because, some people are like, oh, it's overdiagnosed. But let's just say, the ADHD kid, they sometimes will have difficulties with a lot of their executive functioning skills. And executive functioning skills are things like time management, emotional regulation, physical regulation of their bodies, right? Sometimes rigidity in thought. And sometimes, even though they might have services in place, right, those services may not directly address some of those areas. So, for example, you give a kid with ADHD who doesn't know how to manage their time,
Right.
extra time, you just gave them more time to do a whole lot of nothing, right? So how could you maybe assist with that? You may want something that addresses that time blindness directly. Teacher will help pace student through a project.
Right.
Teacher will state, first you will do this, then you will do that, lastly you will do this. Something that kind of directly addresses the actual deficit. Right? When people tell me, oh, they should stay after school for homework help, I'm like, you want this kid who had a hard time from 8 to 3 to stay in school a whole hour longer? It sounds great to say, stay for extra help. But when you actually look at it in the context of that particular student's needs, that's torture.
I mean, I like how you put it, because that is true. If a child is sitting there and he's struggling all day, and then you're saying, oh, he needs extra help for another hour, like that's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And again, going back to that idea of differing abilities, right? For those of us who don't have to try so hard to focus, we don't see it.
Right.
We don't see it. And I'm sure there are some parents out there who their kid gets rave reviews in school, and then they come home and it's like the Tasmanian devil.
Right.
Right? Because they are unraveling.
Right.
They need to get it all out, because they tried so hard all day to sit and behave, and mommy's not going to get a phone call, and I'm going to get a star, and I'm going to get the smiley face, or whatever it is that they're trying to achieve to be quote unquote good.
Right.
As opposed to they are truly having a moment of dysregulation.
Boy, yeah. I mean, it's a lot to think about. Now, what happens when a family doesn't push, or they don't know what they're allowed to push for?
We do, I educate my parents that I work with to the best of my ability, with the knowledge that, it's still their child. So I always try to be very respectful of the parent. I come from a space where parents are doing the best they can. Sometimes the best may not be sufficient in that moment.
Right.
But they are doing the best they can. They love their child, right? So I do try to educate from that vantage point. Sometimes it takes a little longer, the process, because you do have to build trust. Right? The parent has to feel aligned with you. And sometimes it takes a little longer to get to where we have to be.
Right.
There have been moments in my career, a handful, where it may have had to be pushed outside of the parent's purview because it rose to the level of educational neglect.
Right.
Right, but that's been a handful.
You saw that with the child, and you was like, look, we got to do something.
Yes.
Okay. All right. It's good that there's, people in the school are advocating for the children also, you know, instead of, not just the parent. So what advice would you give a parent walking into their first IEP? Like they just...
Oh my goodness. If you're going into your first IEP meeting or committee on special education, I will congratulate you first, because you got that far.
Wow.
Because it can be a process trying to get to that table.
Right.
First things first is you are entitled to every single report prior to that meeting. And they will tell you that, but sometimes prior to that meeting can be the day before, not acceptable, right? You really want to make sure you have all the documents that you need. I suggest at least a full week before so that you can go through it.
Okay.
And you can highlight and you can ask questions. Sometimes when you're at the table, people forget that you are a layperson and you may not know all the lingo. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask, please explain this to me like I am a 5-year-old, right? Have them speak to you so that you can understand the data that is being presented about your child. And it will help you if you're prepared by getting your reports in advance and going through the report. And if there's something you don't understand, you can then highlight it and make sure you address that question. You can also come to the table with some suggestions of your own because you Googled it about what might help your child, right? Because sometimes we go to the status quo. But as we all know, one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
And if you are the first and primary advocate for your child, you want to make sure that your child is getting as much as they can. And don't be afraid to ask, right? If you don't ask, you don't get. You might be surprised and get a whole lot. I know in my particular situation, when I finally got an advocate for one of my children, it was like amazing. I was just like, that's all I had to ask. And mind you, I work in the system and I didn't know the right question to ask. And it was literally the right question that triggered an immediate response for a service that I did not know was available.
See,
right?
Parents, you have to ask for everything. You have to advocate for your kid. I'm telling you. Now, let's do a rapid fire questions here.
Okay.
One thing parents should always ask for.
In the meeting.
Anywhere. One thing parents should always ask for
Data.
With their child. Okay.
Data.
One thing parents should never feel guilty about.
Advocating for their child. And sometimes you might have to do it in a way that others might perceive as aggressive, but I would say assertive. You don't want to be aggressive, but you do want to be assertive. And don't worry about hurting their feelings.
All right. One common mistake parents make and how to fix it.
I think a common mistake is forgetting that no one is going to prioritize your child the way you do. So even though education is about children,
That's good. That's good.
it's not singularly about your child.
Yeah, I get that. I receive that. Because you always think, what about my kid?
Yes.
But yeah, okay. So you got to work through the system and make sure you have all your ducks in a row and then give it to the administration and have them get everything situated. But also be patient a little.
Be patient, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes it takes time because of that first thing that I said about collecting data.
Right.
Right? We can feel all the things that we feel, but what is the data demonstrating? Right?
Gotcha. All right. I wish parents knew that.
I wish parents knew that most of us, most educators are on their side.
Okay.
And I wish they knew that, as I stated earlier, sometimes you are conflicted between what we would like to do versus what we can do within the guidelines of our positions. But if you take the lead, we will be right there with you.
What was the most rewarding moment in your school career?
Oh my goodness. I think my most rewarding moments are when I have students come back and reach out to me and say, Mrs. Charisme, if you hadn't done this for me, or if you had not said that to me, or if you hadn't taken the time to work with my mother or my father, those moments, those are the most important to me because we're planting seeds, right? We're planting seeds and we don't get to see how they flower oftentimes.
Right.
So when you get to see that, when you get to see them come back because they remembered something that you said that you probably forgot a long time ago, but they remembered. I have a student, she was one of my first students, and we happened to just cross paths again. She's now, we're not saying her name, but she is now 40 years old. And she tells anybody, that's my counselor. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be where I am today. Aww. And that just touches my heart.
And that's why we need more people like you in the school system because, we want you to be there advocating for our kids too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I like how you think. So what do you want families listening today to walk away from believe in here?
I want them to remember to breathe. They are not alone. Don't let fear, shame, stigma keep you from doing what you know you need to in your heart for your child. Sometimes shame and fear overrides love. And we want to be in spaces where the love for our child overrides fear and shame.
Thank you so much, Sybil, for today. I really think the families out there listening did gain some knowledge on how to advocate for their child and just to navigate this road, because I know it's not easy. Where can people find you if they,
Well, I do have my own private practice. It's in Valley Stream, and they can find me at www.synergymhc.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. See you on the next All the Ability with Nikki.